Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our mental health question and answer with our own LVC coaches. My name's Morgan Ernst, and I'm on the women's lacrosse team, and I'm the Vice President of SAC for Student Athlete Wellbeing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bridgett. I am a soccer student athlete at LVC and the president of SAC.
I'm Coach O'Brien. I'm the head cross-country coach for both the men and the women, and an assistant coach for track and field, working with our middle distance and distance athletes.
Hi, I'm Coach Fester. I'm the head baseball coach here at LVC.
And I'm Coach Corcoran. I coach field hockey here at LVC.
Thank you for the introductions. To start, we're just going to go through some general statistics about mental health to give some background information. So in 2007, 10 to 15% of student athletes experienced psychological issues so severe that they seeked help. This is 2% higher than their non-athlete counterparts. As of 2019, 35% of student athletes reported suffering from a mental illness crisis that stemmed from stress, eating disorders, burnout, depression, or anxiety. These students are, in general, at a risk to experience mental health problems such as substance abuse and social anxiety. Here's some information on depression as well. As of 2005, 10 to 20% of student athletes reported having suffered from depression. Depression in many student athletes occurs from non-sports related reasons. It can increase likelihood of injury due to distraction, decreased concern, being less alert, and as well as leading to depression. There's also something known as overtraining syndrome. It can decrease the concentration, fatigue, and depressive symptoms.
And now here's some information on anxiety and eating disorders in student athletes. So anxiety can affect performance through negative affect, and this would decrease concentration through distraction and difficulty focusing on tasks due to the negative thoughts that are brought up by anxiety. And these negative thoughts can actually affect the student athlete during, before, and after competition. For eating disorders on performance, unhealthier athletes, so the ones who aren't eating the proper diet, will perform worse for a longer amount of time due to the poor nutrition, and it affects them both physically and psychologically. And physically, they have decreased running speed, low energy, and weakness due to malnutrition, as well as dehydration. And psychologically, they have decreased concentration, anxiety, depression, and obsessive thinking due to the malnutrition. So why are student athletes at a higher risk of developing mental disorders? They have a lot of pressure to adhere to the academic deadlines combined with excessive sporting commitment. And age increases risk for certain disorders. So college students, ranged 18 to 22 respectively, are at a time in which their life is being completely changed. And so that increases likelihood of anxiety as well as eating and substance abuse disorders. And the identity of the athlete may strongly be tied to them as playing a sport. And so they may find that their academic workload restricts them from training as much as they would like to really adhere to that identity that they created for themselves. And additional stressors to being an athlete are the potential of suffering from serious injury. So actually just the nervousness of getting injured increases the anxiety of that athlete. Getting cut from the team or experiencing conflict with other team members or coaches. And these are just additional stressors that students who are not athletes wouldn't normally undergo.
Now we're going to transition more into the Q&A session.
So the main stigma is just not wanting to come out and talk about it, because when you have the word stigma, it has this very negative connotation, and it's maybe like socially more unacceptable to have a mental illness, or at least it's perceived that way. So I see with athletes and mental illnesses, they do bottle it up. They don't want to talk about it. They're afraid of how they'll be treated if they do disclose that they are struggling. So unfortunately, that just leads then to this downward spiral of more negative behaviors like isolation and even further anxiety and depression.
Yeah, and since some athletes don't feel comfortable coming right out and talking about it, what are some signs that you would potentially look for in student athletes that could tell you they might be struggling?
Yeah, so body language is really key. usually whenever you're happy and confident, you stand more upright, you're more smiley. But whenever you're just something's bothering you, you can usually see shoulders drop, heads go down, less eye contact. And you also see athletes kind of remove themselves from the situation or from their friends and peers. So that's something, or a couple signs that we really look for, but everybody responds differently. So having a really strong relationship with your student athletes as a coach, I think is a really key in seeing those immediate signs.
Coach Fester, have any student athletes ever come to you for help involving mental health?
Yeah, so I've been here for 2 years, and we've had a number of conversations with our players. The stress and anxiety that comes with not just being a college student, but an athlete is a pretty heavy weight. So we've had a number of healthy discussions. I'll tell anybody that if you are feeling stressed, once you have that first conversation, you will feel so much better. But it's, I've seen with kind of this younger generation, I think they have expectations that mental health is taken seriously and that somebody will be there to listen to them and knows how to handle it. I've been really impressed with what our students are willing to share with me and with other people on campus.
Do you think the culture at LVC is that, all student athletes feel comfortable with other coaches?
I think to an extent, yes. We have so many stakeholders here on campus, whether it's your advisor or, a club that you're in or a group, or the fact that there's 10 people in your class and you know all your professors. There are so many people and coaches and other, I've seen a lot of success with players talking to the players and other teams. So I think the community here is really positive and really accepting, and there's a lot of ears there to listen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the coaches themselves are just really friendly with each other and create friendships that isn't just coach versus coach. And so just hanging out, or not really hanging out, but being around my coach, I think I've gotten to know other coaches. And, Coach Amber, you came on my trip freshman year to Connecticut. And so I think just the cohesiveness of the coaches being friends with each other opens up that opportunity for student athletes to feel comfortable with other coaches. Would you treat a student athlete any different on the field if you knew that they had mental health issues?
As far as being on the field, I'd like to say no, just because I want to remain equal across the board, treat everybody fair. And, I think if you're struggling with a mental illness and you're not maybe completely out and other people don't know, I don't want to be that person that would jeopardize that privacy of one of my student athletes. So overall, I would say no, but there is this, little voice in the back of my head that just keeps me in tune with that student athlete and just more mindful of how they are that day.
So Coach O'Brien, actually coming back to you for this next question, but we all know that moving away from home and going to college from high school can be a big transition, leaving your family. So it is stressful going into college as a regular student. How could you say it could be even more on your plate being a student athlete?
Sure. So, I think there's so many wonderful benefits to being a student athlete, and particularly here at LVC. But I think a lot of people just think of being a student athlete as the time commitment, such as practice, the training room, lifting, going to your competitions, right? But I think, and that's a physical toll and maybe a mental toll within that time frame. But there's a lot of buildup, particularly before your bigger competitions, that might have some anxiety prior to competing. And then afterwards, you're going to be, doing a self-assessment. Did that go up to my expectations, better than my expectations, worse than my expectations? All that kind of bleeds out into different periods of your life, right? So it's not just confined to that 2.5 hours a day of what you're doing. You kind of always have your brain ticking along, right? So I feel like there's definitely a mental toll that can certainly build up throughout the course of a season, and can build up throughout the course of your athletic career in college too. So just being mindful of that, there is an additional burden, along with the benefits that come from being a student athlete, that it can take its toll on people as well.
If you had a student athlete that felt comfortable and had the courage to come and talk to you about a mental health issue that they were experiencing, would you feel that was a comfortable conversation with them? Or did you say it could be tense or uncomfortable?
Sure. I mean, I would say, I don't know if it's just me personally, but even during difficult conversations, I've always felt relatively comfortable in talking with my student athletes. It's also important to know, in what ways you can help them. Coach Fester talked about that before a little bit, that sometimes just opening that conversation can go a long way and help most people. And then it's also important to realize where we're not 100% qualified to give great advice, and we have awesome resources on campus. So maybe bridging the gap between that student athlete that is hesitant to seek additional help, helping connect the dots for them, bringing them to that spot. Maybe that's physically or a phone call. Because I've seen many wonderful outcomes from situations like that, right? So just as a coach, kind of understanding what the limitations are. Once you might deliver somebody to that higher level of care, you don't just get to wash your hands at that point, right? So it's checking in with that student athlete, making sure that's going well for them, following up after things too. So just kind of walking alongside them on their journey is really important.
Do you feel that on the flip side of that, as a student athlete, there's resistance to getting help?
Yeah, I think there is, especially, I mean, you had mentioned earlier that there is this heightened fear sometimes as a student athlete, like being cut from a team or getting injured. And I guess in many ways, you don't want to, I mean, you guys would probably know better than anybody as student athletes. You don't want to put your problems on anybody else. You probably want to be strong and try to power through and manage through, what's on your plate. And understanding that as a student athlete, you do have a little bit more on your plate than most students on campus.
Next question for you, Coach Fester. So as we know, most coaches are not trained professionals or counselors. So if a student athlete approached you, how would you handle that situation?
Yeah, and, the first step is to create an environment and an atmosphere, within your program where an athlete feels safe and comfortable coming to talk to you. Or is comfortable talking to a teammate, and then is comfortable maybe having that teammate bring it up with the coach. These conversations that they're not easy. And one of the things I deal with, because I do coach men, is kind of breaking down some of these barriers of masculinity and being okay asking for help. And that can be very difficult for anybody to do, especially men in our society. So I think if you have an environment where it's okay to not be okay, then it's going to be easier to help students. And like Coach O'Brien said, if I don't feel comfortable or capable, taking them to that next step, then whether it's referencing the counseling center, or if I think it's serious enough, taking them down and walking down with them to the counseling center. And there are many ways that we are trained as staff to do this the right way. And I hope our athletes know that we know how to professionally handle, a lot of these situations.
Is there any advice that you guys would give to someone who has been told by a teammate that they're not doing well, and maybe they say, hey, can we keep it between us, but I'm really struggling, or but the friend doesn't want to betray them. So how do they kind of go about that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure that situation happens often. And the students aren't really trained on how to deal with serious mental health issues, and there are many staff members on campus that are. So I think it's important. There are times when upperclassmen and leaders on a team, you might have to sacrifice a short-term trust with a friend in order to really help them. And I can almost guarantee that friend will appreciate that.
Can you talk a little bit about who we have on campus, maybe on the other side of campus that student athletes could go to?
Yeah, so there's kind of a whole litany of services. You've got our trained counselors who can then do referrals to setting up maybe regular appointments. There's drop-in hours. Stevie Falk is one of the most impressive people I've met here on campus. Drop-in hours to talk with people. There's the 50-50 peer helpers. There are so many resources throughout the week where you can stop in for 10, 15 minutes and talk to somebody and feel a little bit better. And kind of through all that, there's I think triaging that is kind of done to assess how much help is needed. But it doesn't need to be a big deal. It can be a pretty quick thing and a little check-in, and that can really go a long way. And I think LVC has a whole wraparound support services to do that on every level.
Do you think it would be beneficial for the student athletes to have a specific committee amongst the coaches or staff in the athletic building for discussing the signs or noticing student athletes, or maybe just another advocate for them?
Sure. So, I think one of the biggest things is just being trained to know what you should be looking for, but also knowing that everybody is a little different too, right? So some of our people on our teams that might project as the strongest and doing the best, you never know what's beneath the surface level, right? So I don't know if a specific committee would be able to solve all those issues, because I feel like it's more about the interpersonal relationships. But I think maybe a training for coaches for different types of signs to look for would be awesome. We already have a great system at LVC called the CARE team, right? So all the coaches are involved with this, and it ranges a whole bunch of different things that with student athletes that we're essentially creating a team around that student athlete to make sure that things are going well for them. And it can range from the littlest of things to, maybe somebody had somebody pass away in their family, and we need to make sure that all of their teachers are aware of it. So, it's a really great system. It's relatively new. It's been revamped, I should say, over the last year. I've seen personally great things in my program with it. So I feel like we have some new infrastructure that is going to be really positive for us moving forward. But you're right, maybe an additional training would just be helpful for us to know how to best serve our student athletes.
As you all are college coaches, I'm assuming that bloomed from being a student athlete yourself, what it was like as a student athlete, if you dealt with mental health or if you felt the stress of maybe what the student athletes are feeling now.
Yeah, for me, I definitely felt a lot of pressure as a student athlete, and I was thankful to have a really great coach that we still have a great relationship. And I remember going to her office whenever something really powerful hit me, and she was there to talk me through it and just kind of guide me to where I needed to go next. And my teammates were just so integral with helping me kind of just continue on. And I think that was 10 to 12 years ago. I don't want to put my age out there, but it's a lot different than what it was, I think, even 10 years ago. I think for you guys as student athletes, there's just so many, I guess there's more awareness around mental health, and there's a lot of people that are more open about sharing their experiences. And I think it's a very powerful thing to be vulnerable as well, and kind of connect with each other on those same storylines. But my coach and my teammates were definitely they had the biggest impact on me whenever I was struggling.
Yeah, my senior year in college, I had a pretty serious knee injury where I missed a majority of the season, and it really altered my career trajectory. And I think what can be so difficult for college students and especially athletes is that we kind of have these paths that we set for ourselves, right? And we have these routines and these things that we do. And when that path gets altered, it can be really tough, where kind of you see what you plan for yourself not happening anymore. And that's something I had to deal with. And I think I learned a lot about how to deal with that the wrong way and the right way. But I think what you all as student athletes have the opportunity right now is college is the time to develop healthy habits and develop those strategies to deal with mental health, with stress, with anxiety, because those habits you develop in college will be with you the rest of your life. So it's a really great opportunity to practice all kinds of things, and mental health is one of those things you need to practice.
All right. So like Coach Corcoran, I too am an LVC former student athlete. I'm a little older than she is, and I was definitely less successful than she was, that's for sure too. But I had so many wonderful experiences here, but my senior year in particular, kind of like Coach Fester, I did pick up an injury that really changed the trajectory of my season. So with about 5 weeks left in our cross-country season, I missed about 3 weeks of running. It really kind of set me back from all the work I had done throughout my career, and especially that season to prepare for that. I feel like that's really served me well because I had to process that on the go as a senior captain, still kind of be there for my teammates while I was personally grieving internally. And by the end of the season, I was able to kind of reframe my mindset about what I could bring to the team and help. And while I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be as an individual, I still believe that I brought some key characteristics to that team doing well that season. We wound up having a pretty strong showing at our conference meet. So I'm really proud of that. And I also feel like that served me well as a coach too, knowing that, as a coach, all the LVC coaches want everything to be perfect for our student athletes. We want you guys to be successful in the classroom based on your hard work. We want you to be successful on the field or the course or in the pool with your hard work. But knowing that you guys are humans, like things will go wrong on occasion, right? We cannot protect you from that. So being able to serve you as well as we can through your journey is really important. And I feel like anything that ever went wrong for me as a student athlete has at least served as a starting point for a learning opportunity and how to help others moving forward.
So on behalf of SAC, Morgan and I would like to sincerely thank you guys all so much for taking the time out of your morning and joining us on this Q&A panel. We know this will help open up the conversation surrounding mental health, and LVC is such a big family that we want this conversation to be open throughout all the coaches and student athletes that are in the athletics department. So thank you all so much. This is going to help current Dutchmen and future Dutchmen to come, and we can't wait to be back on campus with you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.